The Vorac war fleet tore through the fabric of space, their sickle-shaped dreadnoughts emerging from FTL in perfect formation. High Commander Vex'thal stood on the command deck of the Dominion's Wrath, his 4 eyes scanning the blue-green world below. Earth, the birthplace of humanity, the target they had studied for decades. "Scan the planet," Vex'thal ordered, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. "I want energy signatures, defense grids, population centers, everything." Tactical Officer Xerix worked his console, his clawed fingers dancing over the holographic interface. The bridge crew waited in silence, the hum of the ship's systems the only sound. Then the scans completed. Xerix hesitated. "Report," Vex'thal snapped. "Commander, Therese, nothing." Vex'thal's exoskeleton stiffened. "Explain." Xerix pulled up the holographic projection of Earth. No energy spikes, no orbital defenses, no life signs. Just silence. The cities stood empty, their skylines broken by time and creeping vegetation. "That's impossible," Vex'thal growled. "Humans don't just disappear. They're primitive. They cling to their homeworld like parasites." Xerix adjusted the scan parameters, running them again. "The readings are accurate, Commander. No power sources, no movement. The atmosphere is breathable." "But Therese, no one here." Vex'thal's claws dug into the armrests of his command throne. This wasn't right. The Vorac Dominion had spent years preparing for this invasion. They had studied human history, their wars, their politics. Humans were supposed to be fractured, divided, weak. They should have been cowering on their planet, begging for mercy as the Vorac fleet darkened their skies. "Send down a recon team," Vex'thal ordered. "I want boots on the ground. If the humans are hiding, we'll dig them out." The Vorac shock troops descended in drop pods, their armored forms cutting through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Captain Krellis led the ground team, his squad fanning out through the ruins of what had once been New York. The streets were cracked and overgrown, vines snaking through shattered windows. The skeletal remains of vehicles rusted where they had been abandoned. Krellis stepped over a broken sign, its faded letters barely legible. "See you among the stars." "Captain," one of his soldiers called. "Over here." The Vorac troopers gathered around a half-buried data cache, its surface corroded but still intact. Krellis pried it open, revealing a primitive but functional playback device. He activated it. The holographic image of a grizzled human admiral flickered to life. The man wore an old-style uniform, his face lined with age but his eyes sharp. He smirked. "If you're seeing this," the admiral said, his voice rough but amused, "you're too late. We left, and we took everything." The recording ended. Krellis' exoskeleton paled. He turned to his squad, their expressions unreadable behind their helmets. "They didn't die," he said slowly. "They migrated." Back aboard the Dominion's Wrath. Vex'thal listened to Krellis' report in silence. The bridge crew shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't how the invasion was supposed to go. "Commander," Xerix said quietly, "if the humans left Earth centuries ago, where did they go?" Vex'thal's eyes narrowed. "Scan the system, every planet, every moon, every asteroid. I want to know where they went." The Vorac fleet spread out, their sensors sweeping the solar system. They found remnants of human activity, abandoned shipyards, the skeletal frames of half-built megastructures, the gutted remains of what might have been a Dyson swarm. And then, at the edge of the system, they detected something else. A warp gate. It was ancient, its structure pitted by micrometeorites, but its power signature was unmistakable. It pointed toward deep space, its destination unknown. Xerix's claws trembled as he deciphered the last human transmission stored in the gate's databanks. "Project Exodus successful. All colonies report in." Vex'thal's mandibles twitched, track their trajectory. Now, as the Vorac fleet prepared to follow the trail, a single, looping signal pulsed from the darkness, a distress beacon, faint but persistent. a derelict human ship drifting in the void. Vex'thal stared at the signal on the holographic display. Bring it aboard. I want to know what happened to them. The Vorac didn't realize it yet, but they had already lost. Humanity wasn't gone. They were waiting. The Vorac dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere like a swarm of locusts, their plasma engines scorching the abandoned cityscapes below. Captain Krellis adjusted his combat visor as the landing ramp hissed open, revealing a world frozen in time. His armored boots crunched on broken pavement as his shock troops fanned out, pulse rifles sweeping the empty streets. Perimeter secure, growled Sergeant Fralix, his mandibles clicking in irritation. No heat signatures, no movement, just ruins. Krellis stepped over a rusted bicycle half, buried in weeds, his scanners pinging uselessly. The buildings around them stood like skeletons, their windows shattered, vines crawling up the sides. A faded billboard flapped in the wind. The words, "See you among the stars," barely legible under decades of grime. Check the structures, Krellis ordered. I want answers. The Vorac troops moved in pairs, their exoskeletons glinting under the pale sunlight. Private Drix kicked open the door of what had once been a human dwelling. His rifle's targeting beam cutting through the dust, filled air. Captain, Drix called out, his voice tight. You need to see this. Krellis stepped inside, his optics adjusting to the dim interior. The walls were covered in faded photographs, humans smiling, laughing, living. A child's drawing was pinned to a refrigerator, the colors long since bleached by time. These mammals left, Drix muttered, running a claw over a layer of dust thick enough to mark centuries. They didn't die, they just walked away. Krellis's mandibles twitched. Impossible. No species abandons their homeworld without a trace. A sudden chime from his wrist terminal interrupted him. It was Xerix, the fleet's tactical officer, his holographic face flickering in the dim light. Captain, we found something, Xerix said, his voice edged with unease. A buried data cache near what our archives identify as Times Square. It is addressed to us. Krellis signaled his squad, and they moved quickly through the overgrown streets, their boots kicking up clouds of dust. The cache was hidden beneath a collapsed monument, its surface still gleaming despite the years. Play it, Krellis ordered. The holographic projector sputtered to life, revealing the grizzled face of a human admiral. His eyes were sharp, his mouth curled into a smirk. If you're seeing this, the admiral said, his voice crisp despite the centuries. Old recording. You're too late, we left. And we took everything. The image flickered, shifting to show massive ships, thousands of them, lifting off from Earth's surface, their engines lighting up the night sky. Project Exodus was a success, the admiral continued. Every last one of us, every colony ship, every ark, every warship. We didn't run, we chose to leave. Krellis felt his exoskeleton prickle with cold realization. The humans hadn't been wiped out. They hadn't fallen to some unseen catastrophe. They had migrated. The recording wasn't finished. The admiral leaned closer, his grin widening. You're probably wondering where we went, he said. Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. The hologram winked out, leaving the Vorac standing in silence. Drix was the first to speak. Captain, if they had this kind of technology centuries ago. Krellis didn't answer. His mind raced. The Dominion had expected a primitive, helpless species, but the humans had been planning this long before the Vorac ever set foot in their system. Signal High Commander Vex'thal, Krellis said, his voice hollow. Tell him, Earth was never the prize. It was just the starting line. As the transmission ended, a gust of wind howled through the empty streets, carrying with it the ghost of a civilization that had outplayed them before the game had even begun. The Vorac fleet spread out across the solar system like a swarm of locusts, their sickle-shaped ships casting long shadows over dead worlds. High Commander Vex'thal paced the bridge of his dreadnought, his claws clicking against the metal deck. Nothing, he growled. No energy signatures, no defenses, no signs of life, just ruins. Xerix adjusted the holographic display, his four-fingered hands moving with practiced precision. Scans confirm Earth's infrastructure was abandoned centuries ago, Commander. But to read something odd. Vex'thal's mandibles twitched. Explain. Xerix zoomed in on the outer system. The asteroid belt, it's been mined. Not just surface extraction. Entire sections carved out. And there. He highlighted a cluster of debris near Neptune. Those aren't natural formations. They're shipyard remnants. A low hiss escaped Vex'thal's throat. So they built something. Where did it take them? The tactical officer's fingers danced across the console, him detecting residual warp signatures, faint but traceable. And this, he pulled up a fragment of data, a garbled transmission buried in the static. It's human, old but intact. The bridge fell silent as the message played. A voice, rough but steady, echoed through the speakers. Project Exodus successful. All colonies report in final evac complete. Earth is closed for business. Vex'thal's claws dug into the armrest of his command throne. Colonies, he muttered. They didn't just leave, they expanded. Xerix's frills flattened against his skull. Commander, if they had the capability for interstellar migration centuries ago, then they're not the primitives we thought. Vex'thal finished, his eyes narrowed. Track those warp signatures. I want to know where they went. The fleet's sensors hummed as they traced the ancient trails, following the ghostly echoes of human ships long gone. Hours passed in tense silence until a junior officer suddenly straightened. Commander, we've got something, a signal, weak but repeating, edge of the system. Vex'thal leaned forward. Origin, unknown. But it's human, a distress beacon by the frequency. Xerix's fingers flew over his console. It's coming from a derelict small vessel, no power signatures, just the beacon, looping. The High Commander's eyes gleamed. A clue, dispatch a boarding team. I want that ship stripped for data. The Vorac shuttle detached from the dreadnought, its engines flaring as it cut through the void. Inside, Lieutenant Draxus checked his plasma rifle, his exoskeleton clicking with anticipation. Stay sharp, he told his squad. If there are any humans left on that wreck, they won't be happy to see us. The shuttle docked with a shudder, its magnetic clamps latching onto the derelict's airlock. The boarding party stepped into the darkness, their helmet lights cutting through the dust-filled corridors. The ship was a tomb, walls scarred by age, consoles dead, the air thick with the stale chill of centuries. Draxus kicked aside a floating debris panel, spread out. Find anything with data, logs, black boxes, personal devices. His squad moved through the wreck, their scanners pinging as they searched. One of them, a young warrior named Crix, suddenly froze. Lieutenant here. Draxus pushed past the others, his breath fogging his visor. Crix stood before a sealed door, its surface marked with faded human lettering. Engineering. Blow it, Draxus ordered. The door crumpled under the force of their breaching charges, revealing a chamber filled with frozen corpses. Human skeletons, still clad in tattered spacesuits, drifted in the zero gravity. At the center of the room, a single console flickered weakly. Its screen cracked but still active. Draxus floated toward it, his gloved hand brushing dust from the display. The screen sputtered to life, revealing a face, a human, his skin pale, his eyes sunken but burning with defiance. The recording played, the man's voice rasping through the speakers. If you're hearing this, you're either one of ours, or you're the poor bastards who just made the biggest mistake of your lives. He coughed, blood flecking his lips. We knew you'd come eventually, the Vorac, the Dominion, the ones who thought they owned the galaxy. Draxus' grip tightened on his rifle. The human grinned, a savage, bloody smile. You think we ran? No, we expanded. We built, and we've been waiting. The screen flickered, the image distorting. Earth was just the beginning, the cradle. And now you've woken us up. The recording ended with a final static-filled whisper. See you among the stars. Silence filled the derelict. Draxus turned to his squad, their faces unreadable behind their helmets. We need to report this, now. Back on the dreadnought. Vex'thal watched the recovered footage, his mandibles clenched so tight they ached. The human's words echoed in his mind. We've been waiting. Ziric's voice was quiet. Commander, if they had this technology centuries ago, what do they have now? Vex'thal didn't answer. For the first time in his long, ruthless career, the High Commander of the Vorac Dominion felt something unfamiliar. Dread, the Vorac boarding shuttle docked with the derelict human vessel with a metallic groan. Lieutenant Draxus adjusted his plasma rifle, his chitinous fingers clicking against the weapon's grip. The airlock hissed open, revealing darkness beyond. Scanners show no life signs, Zirix reported, his voice crackling through Draxus's helmet comm. But the power core is still active at minimal levels. Proceed with caution. Draxus motioned to his squad. 6 Vorac shock troops followed him into the wreck, their armored boots magnetizing to the deck as they stepped into zero gravity. The interior was a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen corpses. Human skeletons drifted in the weightless void, still clad in tattered, antiquated spacesuits. Their helmets were cracked, their flesh long since desiccated by the vacuum. Pathetic, Draxus muttered. They couldn't even survive their own ships. One of his soldiers, Kralik, snorted. Primitive mammals, probably suffocated when their life support failed. Draxus ignored the remark, pushing deeper into the wreck. The ship's design was archaic, bulky control panels, analog switches, everything built for function over elegance. He ran a claw along a faded insignia on the wall. Wezen Pioneer, he read aloud. Some kind of exploration vessel. Kralix kicked a floating skeleton aside. Exploration, more like a funeral barge. Ina, Draxus snapped. Search for anything useful. Data logs, navigation records, anything that tells us where the rest of them went. The squad fanned out, their helmet lamps cutting through the gloom. Draxus moved toward what looked like the bridge. The door was jammed, but a single plasma blast melted the lock. Inside, the command chairs were still occupied by skeletal remains. Their bony fingers curled around control sticks as if frozen mid-maneuver. Then Draxus saw it. A small blackened box mounted beneath the captain's station. A human data recorder. Zirix, he called over comms. I found something. The tactical officer's voice crackled back. Can you retrieve it? Draxus pried the box free, careful not to damage it. Affirmative, it is intact. Back on the Vorac flagship, High Commander Vex'thal waited impatiently as Zirix worked to decrypt the human device. The bridge was silent, the crew tense. Finally, the holographic display flickered to life. A human face appeared, gaunt blood trickling from his nose, his eyes glassy with pain, but he was smiling. Hello, future invaders, the man coughed. His voice was weak but laced with dark amusement. If you're watching this, congratulations. You found one of our oldest ships. Vex'thal's mandibles twitched. Play the rest. The human engineer leaned back in his seat, wincing. I'm Chief Engineer Marcus Cole, last surviving crew member of the USN Pioneer. We were part of Project Exodus, humanity's first real push into the stars. And let me tell you, we made it. A shudder ran through the recording as the ship groaned around him. Alarms blared in the background. You think we ran? No. Marcus grinned, bloody teeth flashing. We expanded, we built colonies, we forged alliances, and we left Earth behind because we didn't need it anymore. The feed glitched, then stabilized. Marcus's breathing was ragged now. This ship, it is a relic, a museum piece compared to what we have now. And if you're here, that means you took the bait. Vex'thal's claws dug into his command throne. Bait. On screen, Marcus chuckled. Earth was empty for a reason. We wanted you to come looking, to follow the trail, to think you were hunting us. He coughed again, then leaned forward, his face filling the frame. But here is the truth. You're the ones being hunted. The recording ended abruptly. Silence. Zirix slowly turned to Vex'thal. High Commander, if they had warp-capable ships this primitive centuries ago, Vex'thal's voice was a low growl. Then what do they have now? Outside the viewport, the derelict Pioneer drifted, a silent tomb and a warning. The rogue planet hung in the void like a forgotten tombstone. Vex'thal's flagship, the Dominion's will, orbited the dark mass, its scanners probing the surface. The Vorac High Commander leaned forward in his command throne, his claws tapping impatiently against the armrest. Anything, he demanded. Zirix adjusted his console, mandibles clicking in frustration. Minimal energy readings, some residual heat signatures, but nothing alive. Vex'thal snarled. Then why does this feel like a trap? Below them, the planet's surface was pockmarked with canyons and craters, its atmosphere thin and lifeless. A perfect hiding place. The Vorac fleet hovered in formation, their sickle-shaped hulls glinting in the distant starlight. Captain Krellis' voice crackled over the comm. Ground teams are ready, High Commander. No resistance detected. Proceed, Vex'thal ordered. The first dropships descended, their thrusters kicking up clouds of dust as they touched down. Vorac shock troops fanned out, their plasma rifles humming to life. The air was stale, the silence oppressive. Then the ground shook. Krellis stumbled, his exoskeleton locking to keep him upright. What was? A deep, mechanical groan echoed across the barren landscape. The canyon walls split, revealing massive hydraulic pistons. The planet's crust shifted, plates of rock and metal sliding apart, like the jaws of some ancient beast. Zirix's console erupted with warnings. High Commander, the planet, it's moving. Vex'thal's eyes widened as the illusion shattered. The planet wasn't a planet at all. It was a shell beneath the rocky exterior, a gargantuan structure pulsed with energy, a network of docks, shipyards, and weapon emplacements. And then the lights came on, thousands of them. Hull after hull flickered into visibility, their cloaking fields deactivating. Sleek human warships, their armor marked with the stark black and gold insignia of the United Earth Stellar Navy, filled the void. Battleships the size of asteroids, carriers bristling with fighter squadrons, cruisers with railguns the length of city blocks. The comm channel hissed to life. Vorac fleet, a woman's voice said, calm and amused. You've been following breadcrumbs for weeks. Must be exhausting. Vex'thal's claws dug into his throne. Identify yourself. A holographic projection flickered onto the bridge. A human woman in a crisp navy uniform leaned back in her command chair, her lips curled in a smirk. Admiral Lisa Hayes, USN Defiance. Welcome to the neighborhood. Krellis' voice was a whisper. Defiance, that's one of their flagships. His smirk widened. Oh, you've heard of us. Good. Saves time on introductions. Vex'thal's frills flared in rage. You lured us here. Obviously, Hayes said. You really thought Earth was our only home. That we'd just vanish without a plan. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp. We've been out here for centuries building, expanding, waiting for idiots like you to show up. Zirix's voice was hollow. High Commander, their fleet outnumbers us 10-1. Hayes tapped a command into her console. Let's make it 20. Another wave of ships decloaked, smaller, faster, their hulls marked with jagged red sigils. Ah, Hayes said, as if remembering something. Meet the Wolfpack Division. They've been dying to meet you. The first railgun round tore through the Dominion's Will's shields like they weren't even there. The impact sent the bridge crew sprawling. Alarms wailed. Vex'thal roared. Return fire. All batteries. Human fighters streaked past, their engines leaving blue trails in the void. Plasma lances from the USN battleships carved through Vorac dreadnoughts, their hulls splitting like rotten fruit. Hayes' voice cut through the chaos. You came to conquer a dead world. Instead, you found us. A Vorac cruiser exploded, its debris scattering into the void. Funny thing about humans, Hayes continued. We don't like being hunted. Another cruiser died. Then another. Zirix gripped his console, his voice shaking. They're herding us, cutting off escape vectors. Vex'thal watched in horror as the human fleet moved with terrifying precision, their formations flawless, their weapons relentless. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. Hayes' hologram flickered again. You thought we were prey, she smiled. Turns out, we're the apex predators out here. The Defiance's main cannon charged, its barrel glowing white hot. Any last words? Hayes asked. Vex'thal's mandibles trembled. You were primitive. The cannon fired. The last thing Vex'thal heard was Hayes' laugh. Where? The void between stars erupted in fire as the USN Defiance's plasma lances carved through the Vorac Dreadnought's hull like a scalpel through flesh. The sickle-shaped warship split apart, its molten core spilling into the vacuum like blood from a gutted beast. Admiral Lisa Hayes watched from her command chair, fingers steepled as the tactical display lit up with 1,000 more human ships powering weapons. All battle groups, she said, her voice calm as deep space. Weapons free, clean sweep. The comms officer grinned. Admiral, locking primary batteries. Across the battlefield, human fighters streaked through the chaos, in formations the Vorac sensors couldn't track. Their movements were too sharp, too precise, impossible for any species the Dominion had ever faced. On the bridge of the Vorac flagship, High Commander Vex'thal's mandibles trembled. His tactical officer, Zirix, slammed a clawed fist against the console. They're ships. They're not just advanced. They're evolving mid-battle. Vex'thal's 4 eyes flicked between screens as another dreadnought exploded. How? Their tech was supposed to be primitive. Scans showed nothing but a new alert blared. Zirix's voice cracked. Commander, the rogue planet, it's moving. The massive human anchorage, once disguised as a lifeless rock, unfolded like a blooming flower. Its surface panels slid apart, revealing rows of dormant shipyards now pulsing to life. From its depths, fresh waves of human vessels emerged, sleek, angular, their hulls marked with sigils the Vorac had never seen. Admiral Hayes' face appeared on every Vorac screen. Her smile was razor thin. You came all this way to conquer Earth. Shame you didn't check the rest of the neighborhood. Vex'thal's flagship shuddered as a volley of torpedoes slammed into its shields. Alarms wailed. Return fire. All batteries target that. Too late, Zirix whispered. The Defiance's main cannon, a weapon the size of a city block, hummed to life. Its barrel glowed white-hot. Hayes leaned forward. This is for New York. The beam lanced out. It punched through the Vorac flagship's shields like they weren't even there. The hull vaporized on contact, the superstructure collapsing inward as the energy wave tore the ship apart from the inside. Vex'thal was thrown from his command throne. He clawed at the deck as the artificial gravity failed. Impossible. We are the Dominion. We've conquered 100 species. Hayes' voice cut through the chaos, cold and clear. And now you've met the 101st. Outside, the Vorac fleet was being dismantled. Human drones, small, agile, and terrifyingly autonomous, swarmed the remaining ships. They latched onto hulls, drilling through armor to plant demolition charges before darting away. One by one, the sickle-shaped dreadnoughts burst apart in silent blossoms of flame. Zirix dragged himself to a dying console. His claws trembled as he pulled up a long-range scan. The readings made his exoskeleton go numb. Commander, he rasped. This wasn't a fleet. It was a garrison. Vex'thal followed his gaze. The scan showed human signals lighting up across the sector. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of colonies, outposts, and shipyards flickering to life like stars at dawn. Hayes' face reappeared, her eyes hard. You thought Earth was our home? Earth was just the crib. The last Vorac cruiser attempted to flee, its engines flaring, a single human interceptor. Faster than anything in the Dominion's records. Looped around it and fired once. The cruiser's drive core detonated, scattering debris across the void. Silence fell over the battlefield. On the Defiance's bridge, Hayes exhaled. Send the message. The comms officer nodded. A single transmission pulsed outward, aimed at the heart of the Vorac Dominion. It contained only 7 words. The galaxy is ours now. Run. Xerix stared at the wreckage of his fleet. His voice was hollow. They let us find Earth. They wanted us to come. Vex'thal's claws dug into his own flesh. We were the prey. Far beyond the battlefield in the dark between stars, 1,000 more human engines flared to life. The last Vorac dreadnought spun helplessly in the void, its engines reduced to molten slag. Secondary explosions rippled along its sickle, shaped hull as escape pods jettisoned in panicked clusters. Admiral Lisa Hayes watched the dying ship through the armored viewport of the USN Defiance, a reflection superimposed over the burning wreckage. All enemy capital ships neutralized, reported Commander Wu from the tactical station. His fingers danced across holographic controls. Remaining Vorac vessels are attempting to jump to FTL. Hayes didn't blink. Let them. On the main display, the shattered remnants of High Commander Vex'thal's armada scrambled for survival. A dozen Vorac frigates glowed blue as their warp drives charged, their formations chaotic with fear. The Admiral's lips curled in a predator's smile. Open a channel to the Dominion survivors, she ordered. The communications officer nodded, and the bridge speakers crackled to life with the hiss of an open transmission. Vorac Fleet, Hayes began, her voice calm as deep space. This is Admiral Lisa Hayes of the United Earth Stellar Navy. You came to our cradle expecting prey. She leaned forward slightly. Instead, you found the apex predator. On the wreckage-strewn battlefield, the last functional Vorac command ship shuddered. Its bridge was a nightmare of flickering lights and sparking consoles, the air thick with the acrid stench of burning circuits. High Commander Vex'thal clutched his bleeding thorax, 3 of his 6 limbs mangled from the explosion that had killed most of his senior staff. Xerix dragged himself across the deck, his exoskeleton cracked from stem to stern. Commander. The human fleet they're not pursuing. Vex'thal's mandibles trembled. Of course not, he rasped. They want survivors, witnesses. His compound eyes reflected the dying light of his fleet. This was never an invasion, it was a demonstration. Back aboard the Defiance, Hayes turned to her tactical officer. Show them Commander Wu. A new holographic projection bloomed above the bridge stations, a star map of the Orion Arm. At first, it showed only the familiar astrographic markers the Vorac had known for millennia. Then, with a series of soft chimes, thousands of new icons appeared. Colonies, shipyards, fleet bases, all marked with the angular sigil of the United Earth Stellar Navy. The map kept expanding, more chimes, more icons, until the entire galactic quadrant glittered with human presence. Earth was just the beginning. Hayes continued over the open channel. While your species squabbled over border disputes, we were building while you measured your strength in dreadnoughts. We measured ours in light. Years. The star map zoomed out further, revealing tendrils of human expansion reaching into neighboring spiral arms. The galaxy is ours now, and this, she gestured to the burning Vorac fleet. This was mercy. On the Vorac command ship, Xerix's antennae drooped in defeat. They were never hiding, he whispered. They were everywhere, watching, waiting. Vex'thal coughed a glob of greenish hemolymph onto the deck. Signal the retreat, he ordered weakly. All surviving ships are to return to Dominion space immediately. His remaining limbs shook with the effort of staying upright. And prepare a full data packet for the High Matriarch. She needs to know humanity isn't coming. They're already here. As the crippled Vorac ships limped away, the human fleet held position, not pursuing, not gloating, simply watching with the quiet confidence of absolute superiority. Admiral, Wu said quietly. Long-range sensors are picking up the first Vorac jump signatures they're running. Hayes nodded. Good, let them carry the message home. She turned to face her bridge crew, the starlight catching the silver in her hair. Set course for the Proxima shipyards. We have a victory to report. As the Defiance's engines hummed to life, the last of the Vorac warp trails faded from the tactical displays. Behind them, the wreckage of Vex'thal's proud armada drifted silently, a graveyard of shattered arrogance, orbiting a dead world that had birthed the galaxy's new masters. On 100 human ships, on 1,000 colony worlds, in the bustling docks of orbital megastations, life continued. Markets bustled, children laughed, scientists researched, soldiers trained. The great machine of human civilization turned its countless gears, unconcerned with the fate of those who had dared test its might. Because humanity wasn't hiding, they were everywhere.